LIJ,
Matt,
welcome back to the podcast.
thanks for having me, dude. It's good to be here again.
Super strange to have you on because we talk so often. We talk literally, I think we talk daily at this point. We trade messages on Signal over text. We also send each other audio messages over Signal, but we also then just call each other just out of the blue like, dude. I know it's a joke in my house whenever my kids hear your messages. They're like, is that LIJ? Yeah, that's LIJ. So it's good to see you, even though we just saw each other like 45 minutes ago on our Friday morning call, but happy to have you back here. Lately, I've been doing, as I think you are aware, I have been doing this concept of the state to get a sense of like what's going on with my guest. My audience is more than familiar with you, but give us the state of the state. What's happening?
The state of the state for me these days is, I'm still doing the podcast. I'm still producing records. I've really got some particular clients that I like to work with. And the podcast has shifted over to video like yours. So that's been a big focus of mine in 2025. And a really big one for me is just trying to get back to my roots in music and learn, cross the bridge more into writing songs and just figuring out how to write lyrics and get up on a mic and sing. That's the stuff that's gotten me really excited.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about that at some point here during our conversation, because I think that ties into something else I want to talk to you about. There's a lot I want to talk to you about, LIJ. This is going to be a exploration of the world of LIJ. I want to talk about, first of all, studio-wise, you essentially have two studios because you have, in your backyard, you have a full-on recording studio. In fact, it's two-story, kind of a loft up above and storage and such, but you have a nicely done Carl Tatz control room, and that didn't exist when I first met you. The control room did, but not the Carl part of it. And then you have a live room and an ISO booth, and that's kind of been the norm for you. However, I'm going to take credit for this idea. If I recall correctly, I told you to take this bedroom that you're in your house and turn that into a dedicated podcast room separate from the studio. And whether you would agree with that or not, you ultimately did it. And it's worked out quite well for you.
I don't remember you telling me, but I believe it. I believe you did. Because we've been talking to each other for, you say we talk to each other a lot, and we were talking this morning. We've been talking to each other every Friday morning for 10 years. It's pretty amazing.
10 years, wow.
For your listeners, we started something, I started something called a mastermind group, which is just I know, Matt, you have one that you're running for your podcast now. And it's essentially creating a dedicated Zoom call space where everybody can get together. Zoom didn't even exist when we started that,
What were we using? Were we using Skype?
I think we were using Google Hangouts. Yeah, so to your point, we talk about so many things. We just trade ideas all the time. So I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I built the studio up here for the podcast because, like doing lots of things, like doing a session in your studio, when you sit down to work, you want to sit down and just get to work. You don't want to have to sit down and, start over every time. And it felt like having to set up my studio to turn into a podcast studio each time I was going to do an interview felt like that. So I just thought, I think it's time to just, have a dedicated space where I can sit down and do interviews. And that's been great. I've always been like that. I don't know how you are, but like, I'll have like 5 computers. I'm like, well, this is the one I go pay bills on. This is the one I, talk to friends on. This is the one I surf YouTube on. This is the one I.
I think I'm just too cheap. I think I'm like, okay, this is going to be the hub of podcasting, mixing, mastering, bill paying, book writing, whatever. So I tend to try to consolidate tasks, and so I have fewer computers around.
Sometimes I wonder if the way we interact with stuff like that too is just the nature of the way our brains work and personality. Like maybe you have an easy time, easier than me or something, shifting in the same space, shifting from one kind of thing to another. And maybe for me, it's easier to just have different spaces for each of those things. I don't know.
Since I've known you, you've really done well and thrived when you have like, this is the setup and that is what that is for. And any deviation from that is not good for you. It kind of throws your world into a little bit of a not disarray, but it gets a little like difficult.
Right, right. Thanks, Dr. Matt.
Well, that's our time,
No, but
LIJ. I'll
that's
see
our
you next
time.
week.
Well, we got
no-
5 minutes left.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes on my schedule.
No,
Which
that's
is
absolutely true. I mean, that's always been true for me. I like having a dedicated thing. I mean, even even the topic of music, I realize that like in order to write a song, I kind of have to leave my workspace and go somewhere else and do it.
Let's come back to that because that's something I think is going to be really important in our conversation today. Back on the topic of spaces for a moment. What's strange is when I first met you and I first came to Nashville, I saw your space at your studio, and my gut reaction was, I want to send you away for a month on a vacation while I do a pimp your studio kind of concept.
Right.
And
Studio makeover.
studio makeover. And what I think is funny is not only with the podcast studio up there in your house and the control room in the backyard in the studio there. I don't know if it's me putting it out in the universe, but somehow both things materialized, except
There you go.
in different ways. So like I imagined your control room looking vastly different, and you had Carl do his thing, and it looks vastly different, and it's far more organized, and it looks sharp. I haven't been there since Carl's done it, so I don't know how it sounds.
Oh, that's right. You haven't seen it yet.
It's been a while
You
since
haven't,
I've
you
been
haven't
there.
seen it or heard it yet, have you?
And then the podcast studio, because I've spent the night in that bedroom as a guest room at one point, and I thought, man, he could turn this into a podcast studio. And lo and behold,
That's so funny. I forgot that when you were here, you were staying in this room when it was the guest room, because we, going all the way back to 2017, I think was maybe the first time with Summer NAMM. All you guys came here. I just put you up in my house, and then we all went down to Summer NAMM together, and we had people sleeping all over. Oh,
Yeah.
and you guys stayed in the studio that time too.
Chris Salem and
Remember that?
I slept in the loft, and he had to put up with my snoring,
That
even
was
though
really funny.
I was
man.
many feet away. I could, rattle the walls with my snoring. Let's come back to this topic that you were talking about stepping away. Recently, you took a trip where you went to Costa Rica for a month.
Yeah.
You spent time writing. The emphasis for me in that trip is that you got a break. You got to just completely just disassociate from everything. You had all your podcast episodes planned. You got all your work done for all your, music and audio clients. And then you just took time to
I
just
kind of snuck out, man.
you kind of did. I was very envious that, wow, LIJ is going away for 30 days. Wow. I want to do that. Tell us about this trip to Costa Rica.
In hindsight, it's always easier to see how your life plays out. But for me, now looking back on it, I realize that being a parent too, and having a kid growing up, and then hit the point where she went off to college, like the point where your kids are growing up, it really tells you, what your life looks like, that and work and your usual routines. And so this became the first year when she was off going to school that I realized, oh, I can start thinking about some things I want to do. And one of them was wanting to take a trip down to Costa Rica. So I started planning ahead for that. I had an original idea in mind, and then that kind of fell through at the last minute, which we don't have to go too much into the weeds on that. But I had to sort of pivot quickly. And then I was like, I've already got this ticket down there. What am I going to do? And I just thought, well, I'll just start looking around for cool beaches and see what's in Costa Rica. I ended up choosing this tiny little beach that's south of pretty well-known touristy beach called Tamarindo. So I was south of there in this little beach called Samara. I knew I really wanted to do something significant and go, spend a month somewhere, like a sabbatical. I had taken 1 year of Spanish when I was in high school, but I don't speak Spanish. So I'm going to where people, I don't know really how to speak the language very well. But it was super fun, man. It was so much fun. And this little beach town that I found was just the right balance of, travelers coming in, locals. It's like a really wonderful beginning surfing location. The waves are just sort of perfect and the sand is flat. so that you can learn and take surfing lessons. And I went and found a little Airbnb down there, and just, some one room, just had
Mhm.
I don't think I turned on the air conditioner for a month. Just had the screens open.
The importance of this is not just the break that you got to take, but also the fact that you got to, as you were talking about getting back into focusing on music, it was a great time for you to kind of do some writing. You took a little setup with you, to
Yep,
focus on
yep, I
that.
did. I got a little backpack guitar,
Okay.
little Martin backpacker. And I knew that I wanted to do more of the songwriting stuff. And I sort of found for me this perfect combo of things that allow me to do that. So this teeny tiny guitar,
Yep.
there you go. You can probably see it right there.
And then recording-wise, what did you
Yeah,
do?
recording. So I've got this little case that carries the whole studio in it right here. And this is
Okay.
actually, sadly, this is a discontinued product from Isotope, but it's called the Spire Studio. Just a battery-powered, simple recording device. This is all I had to carry with me to go to the beach each
Okay.
day, and plug some headphones in, and my iPhone would control it. To describe it to anybody who's not looking. So it's just this round object that's like a heavy book, maybe in your hand, and it's battery powered, and it's got a built-in microphone. It's got headphone jacks, and you've got, if you wanted to plug an electric in or a bass, you can do those kinds of things. So the way it works is, you turn it on and then it Wi-Fi's to your iPhone, and you can just run the session by controlling it on your iPhone. And the thing that really made a difference for me, it's funny how we have these little nerdy bits, the engineering nerdy bits that matter to us a lot. And for me, it was knowing that if I was going to play through a song and try and stay in the creative mode, I couldn't also be in the engineer mode. Like, I've learned that about myself. It's kind of like what we were talking about, needing different places to go different things. And so whenever I used something where I had to program in to fix something, because I'd always mess up, when I was playing guitar. And whenever I had to go punch in and then punch out again, and like program that, I'd sort of lose the groove and I'd forget what I was doing. And then it just sort of killed the creative flow. So this thing would let me, you just sort of hit the stop button and then hit the record button immediately, and it automatically pre-rolls the perfect amount, drops you into record, keeps going. Really had a great flow and was really quick for putting an idea down. And then it's really easy to layer vocals in it and all that kind of stuff.
As opposed to bringing a laptop, bringing an interface, bringing a microphone, and
Exactly.
carrying the engineer head along with the musician head.
Again, that sort of like ties you down to a spot. I actually rented a bike while I was there that had a basket in the front from Xenia's Bike Rentals, one block over. So I just sort of cut a deal with her for renting a bike for the month, and took it with me, and could throw all my stuff in the basket and ride to the beach. And this thing's so small, the studio is so small that I could put the bike on a kickstand, park the studio on the seat of the bike, and then it would be at guitar height, and I could just play guitar right into it. And this, for me, there's something amazing about being out there with the ocean waves rolling in. You got this incredible view. The temperature and the air feels perfect, and the breeze is coming in off the ocean, so it feels great. And it's just very inspiring for writing. I mean, if the beach gets busy, it gets a little crowded, and then you don't really want to sing out while somebody's sunning on a blanket next to you. But
Right. You don't want to be that guy.
I don't want to be that guy.
How important was this time away for you in terms of your day-to-day audio, music, podcast world? Like, was it a nice reset for you?
It was beautiful. It was incredible. I mean, I at a point in my life where I really think about taking care of myself and health, and, what's the next chapter for me. And so it felt like a really great, healthy, relaxed reset. The food is incredible there. I mean, I was eating fresh mangoes from the farmer's market every day. I was going out. I figured out very quickly on my bike rides, all right, where can I go find the best acai bowls in town, and, just eat really well. So it's very healthy in that respect. It felt like a reset in terms of work stuff. So in terms of music production, it feels like a reset because it gets me excited and inspired about doing music. And for the first time ever, I'm sending songs that I wrote to some of the clients I work with as opposed to just them sending me their songs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of cool. And I think it does also establish a little bit of, probably establishes a little bit of credibility with people that I work with too. Because if they hear me write a song that sounds cool, that gives them a new take on my feedback when I'm working with them about their song too, you know?
That's inspiring. And like I say, I'm still envious of the fact that you were able to take off for a month and just kind of disassociate from everything.
I was still sending you text messages, dude.
Oh, I know. And we still talked, which was hilarious. I think you got to a point where you were mildly bored on some respects.
So maybe to your point, the boredom, it wasn't so much boredom as it's like, what do? I don't know anybody there. I'm trying to meet people, but it's like, I'm not making new, close friends down there. I'm just meeting people as I see them again there. We start getting to know each other. The whole trip was like, I had to sort of find myself there. That's what I'm getting at. As I started to do that, as I started to figure out, all right, now I know where to go surf. Now I know where to go write a song in the afternoon. I started to get really excited. And then by the time it was over, I didn't want to leave.
Now, prior to that, and I'm transitioning here to a new topic, if you all haven't figured that out.
Go for it.
Prior to that, you and I were collaborating on a project, which was really fun. A guy named Chris Chamness, and you produced and engineered, and I mixed, and our friend Justin Perkins mastered, and then I did the project in Atmos and mastered the Atmos. That was an interesting and fun thing to do. And I don't know if others have experienced this, but when you're working with a friend of yours, in our case, our friendship, how that is slightly different than working with people you don't really know as well. The dynamic changes a bit. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think the ways that it changes are, well, let's start with the things that don't change. What doesn't change is your internal barometer of what you think about music, what you think about, what you're doing with it, how you respond to sound, all of that stuff. So you have that, you bring that into it. And then because we're friends, we've got like an instant dialogue. So it's easier to just chat about stuff. Mm-hmm. But you also have to think about like, how do you communicate about the figuring out stuff as you go? If you're looking for ways to figure out what the sound should be, I think you do have to communicate a little differently, or at least you're conscious of it, I mean, how do you feel about it? Did you feel like you had to, carefully package your words to me, or did you feel like less so?
No, less so.
Yeah.
Because it was a very casual kind of experience. I think you played me the rough at NAMM walking down the street. I think you and I and Chris Salem were walking back to our hotel, and you said, dude, check this out. And here's Chris's stuff. What do you think? And I listened to the song and was like, oh, I'll totally mix that. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. Anyway, we were walking back from Rock and Brews, and that's when you pulled out the phone and started playing it for me. And that right there, that was the beginning. That was like, oh, this is right up my alley. It's, it's a rock thing.
A couple of thoughts on that too. One is it's super fun to work with you making records. I mean, why did it take us so long to get to this point? Two, your mixes sound great and your work sounds great. And you have dove into this world of Atmos, so all of a sudden this was the first opportunity I ever had to take a record that I was producing or a single that I was producing with an artist and finally enter into the immersive world to complete it and to finish it out. No, sorry. This is the second time because we did Skadoosh together, which was my record.
Yeah. We did a couple songs off that.
Yeah, which was a lot of fun. That was a great way to get into that, get my feet wet. But it was great because, you know, I knew also, as, you know, to the point of having a communication with you, is that one of the big takeaways that I know Chris, the artist I'm producing, really enjoyed about working with you is the level of communication that you keep up. You know, we both felt really connected and really taken care of, you know, and that's a big deal, I think, in whether it's production or mixing or mastering, you know. So that was really cool, you know, and I think that was appreciated, that as we figured it out, you know, especially going into something brand new like Atmos too. I mean, you know, even just for a stereo mix, but, you know, both of those things as a producer, there's this level of letting go and trust and new discovery too, because something that you've done that you're familiar with, and oftentimes the funny thing is you think you're familiar with, you know, a lot of times our perception of stuff is just, it's in our head. You know, we think we have this perception of what it sounds like. And then maybe I send it to you, and then maybe you're hearing, you're like, well, it doesn't sound at all like that. You know, it sounds, this is what I hear, and this is where we can take it. And so then, you know, and then you send it back. And then as a producer, I receive it and I'm like, oh, that's, you know, there's newness to it, you know, and it's like both exciting, but it's also, it can also be, you know, it's also like you have to listen to it a couple of times too and get used to it. And it's a new thing, you know? And I think what I'm describing is probably true for anybody who's doing this. It's like, you know, we get immersed in it, and you know, we all talk about this too, right? Is the, you know, the idea that records are never done, they're just abandoned. And that, I think that point has to do with the fact that we're always finding stuff to change in things, because that's actually what moves us forward in production. I mean, if we didn't find stuff to change, we'd just be like, that voice memo sounds great, let's put it out. But you know what I mean? So you have to learn to let go of things. Like, probably as a producer, I have to turn stuff over to you as a mixer, and I have to learn to let go of it. And then you turn it back over to us. And maybe we have comments, and then you have to like, also like in reverse, let go of it back to us as it goes to mastering, and then it comes back. And it's just always fascinating to me how that process works.
Do you find it difficult because you've had kind of a viewpoint and a broader picture of how you wanted this to work out and play out and sonically be what it is? The minute you turn it over to somebody else to mix, a new filter gets applied.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's different. That's not what I expected.
Well, it's similar to like co-songwriting. You know, you have to realize, or even just hitting the studio to track with the band. It's like the other players in the band you're playing with might interpret their parts differently than what you had in your head. Well, first of all, if you trust the people you're working with, like I do with you, you know, you have to learn to let go in the way that says, you know what, I'm gonna wait until, you know, like, not even wait, I'm just going to let everybody follow their own vision, and then we'll discover what the collective vision for this creation is. And that becomes the new thing. It was a poet that I recorded many decades ago, Leo Canellan, and we recorded him doing a long poetry piece, a poem, epic poem that he had written. And when we took it and started creating music around it and doing other things, you know, we went back to him, and I think there was a little bit of concern that like we were changing what he had done. And he just said to us, he was like, you know, when you make something, when I make a poem, when I put it out there in the world, it's like, it's not mine anymore. I let go of it, and it's just, now it belongs to the listener or whoever's going to work with it next. And I always thought that was an interesting way to view the stuff we do.
How somebody interprets a song, or how somebody interprets a poem, or you know, any kind of piece of art, they're applying their own filter.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so while you can put it out and say, okay, it's exactly what I want it to be, but it's still going to be interpreted in different ways. The message is going to be heard in different ways. Some people, interpret song lyrics or the overall message completely different from one person to the next. The minute you introduce another human being and their filter into it, everything shifts. And I like that, what you talk about, letting go.
Yeah. I think it's important. And the thing that I keep learning over and over again is when I do collaborate with people and I trust the people that I work with and, team up with, I'm always amazed at the results that can happen. The unexpected, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts kind of idea. A song, the whole concept of a band having a sound, it's that collaboration effort. It's like the push and pull of all that stuff. And it's, push and pull is a good term, right? So our experience doing what we do can feel like pushes and pulls. And that can feel uncomfortable, so it can make you wonder if a little bit of uncomfortable feeling is something to worry about or not. And it's like, if you just let it, trust and let it go, you come to the other side of it. And then hopefully what you end up with is something that presents a whole new way of looking at it.
I don't know if you deal with this. I brought it up to somebody the other day and I think it was, it was on somebody else's podcast. Somebody took a picture of the two of us at a trade show. I think it might have been Maurice from PMC, and posted a picture of the two of us, and it said the podcasters. And I kind of bristled at that a little bit because I was like, well, that's not really how I see myself. But the fact is that you and I both have these podcasts that are popular, which is great.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've enjoyed the benefits of these podcasts and the doors that have opened as a result. But it's not entirely who we are. I mean, I don't know how you see yourself, but I kind of look at you and I go, okay, well, LIJ is a songwriter, he's a producer, he's an engineer, he's these other things. Just as I see myself as, an engineer, mixer, mastering, whatever. Podcaster is not what I think of, but it's kind of, for better or for worse, it's a title that has been attached to the two of us.
We made it,
We made it.
We made these podcasts. We made this label for ourselves.
You're right.
Do you remember when you thought up the idea of doing a podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like it didn't exist. And then you thought it up and then you started doing it. And now in hindsight, people take a picture of you and they write podcaster.
Right. Like
right. we make our paths. We
do. We do. And I don't want to, be, I don't want to sound like Eddie Vedder complaining about being a rock star, but it's, it's like, okay, well, it is what it is. But I'm just curious how you feel about that, how you feel about how you're
I had a funny, goofy experience last night. I went to a show actually, and I was a little out of it. I was a little wiped out. So I went anyway, just to be supportive of the show. And somebody came up to me and said, hi. And I had two people and I didn't quite recognize him at first. So I thought I was like, oh, I think he's somebody who listens to the show because he brought it up. So I thought, oh, this is a fan of the podcast. It turned out to be an old friend of mine. I just didn't recognize him in the dark and hadn't seen him in years and years. It was so funny. So in that way, I mean, it's sort of the same point. It's like being, wanting to be the person that you are and then being recognized as a podcaster, or being recognized by somebody and then thinking, oh, they must be recognizing me as the podcaster. And then it's like, no, they just wanted to know you. This is somebody you know. Anyway, that cracked me up. I just forgot your question, man. What was your question?
I'm just wondering how you feel about these labels and how you handle that. And do you have any kind of qualms about being identified as a podcaster?
Not really, but I do. I think that when you choose to do something like doing the podcast for me, or whether you've chosen to open a studio or a mastering studio or whatever the direction is you're going in, like we build up momentum for ourselves where it can feel hard to pivot or to even consider like shutting something down and starting again. I mean, I know you went through that with a studio a long time ago, you know, having to go through something that becomes your identity, the way other people see you and the way that you sort of think about yourself too, and even a responsibility you feel to the thing you've created. And it can be really tricky to do a pivot, but sometimes like big pivots are exactly what we need, you know?
You know, obviously we're talking about you and I and our thoughts about this. I'm curious about how our listeners, up and coming audio people, professional audio people, like how do our listeners feel about their own identities and how they think about, you know, hey, I'm a songwriter or I'm a studio owner or you know, maybe they're in a band, but they happen to own a studio and they want to be known for having the band, but then they get associated with the studio, vice versa. It's like sometimes we don't get to choose who we are perceived as.
Well, I'd push back that on a tiny bit. I agree that people perceive us the way they perceive us. But I do remember it, that, you know, reminds me of being in my 20s and people were seeing me as Eli the engineer. And I had this moment where I was like, I don't want to be Eli the engineer. I want to be, you know, LIJ the producer. Or I don't think I was ready. I don't think I decided to start calling myself LIJ at that point. But you know, I went through that moment where I was like, I really want to do production. And actually I think I was a little less concerned about how people thought of me as just wanting to be in the creative seat. You know, I wanted to be part of the creative team, which of course engineering is part of the creative team. And it really depends on, you know, where you put yourself. But at that point I just sort of like stepped away from the first studio I was at and, not all at once, but, probably over the following year and followed a band as we traveled around to wherever they wanted to record and took on the role of producer. So you know, that's a familiar feeling to me from way back when, you know, having to make a shift like that. And it's hard, you know, it's probably easier to make that shift in your 20s than it is in your 50s. That is the thing for me, is like wanting to, do more of the music. You know, it's also, there's the way people perceive us, but there's also the way we plan out our time. We fill our time. You know, we don't leave ourselves time to do those, to be something else if we spend all our time doing the thing that we're wanting to shift from.
Let's talk a little bit about the balance of time for you, because you're a single parent. You have a kid, you know, granted your kid's in college and traveling all over the world, but you've got, you know, the parenting, you're doing this podcast, you're doing songwriting, because you're constantly going out of town to meet with buddies to do songwriting and recording, and then you're running your studio as well. So can you talk a little bit about time management with all these different activities that you have and any thoughts you might have for others?
Yeah, I got none of it. Got no time management.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I don't have any advice whatsoever.
No, I guess for me, it's like the calendar has always been a thing. You know, I always put stuff in the calendar and just fill it up. The hard part about that is sometimes it's like, like I was the guy who could stack everything and fit it into the trailer or the back of the van easily because I could figure it out.
Pac-Man.
And then, Pac-Man. And then as you saw, my first iteration of the studio looked like Pac-Man had been there because there's like stuff everywhere. And I think that can be, I can do that to a calendar too, you know? I can fill it up with stuff and I've planned it, and then it's upon me and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do all this stuff? It does help me get things done that I wouldn't necessarily do otherwise, but it's maybe not the best plan. It's hard to know. I mean, going away for a month to a beach where I didn't have anything that I had to do, but you know, like to get all these things done, I mean, really it's just planning. It's just planning it and trying to have some boundaries on stuff. For me, like I've always been staying healthy has been very important. So a boundary of like quitting work at 6 and going up and exercising, and then having dinner has always been a daily reset for me. Trying to take weekends off, never scheduling a session on a weekend if I can help it, and trying to keep all that stuff scheduled Monday through Friday has been really helpful. I end up still working on weekends anyway, but at least it's just me doing the work that I chose to do, as opposed to, being on a schedule with somebody.
Sometimes I pack all that shit in on the schedule and, it's like Jenga for the calendar. No, it would be Tetris, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you squeeze it all in and it looks good and you think, oh, of course, that's naturally going to work. And then you get to the day and you're like, who planned this? Who decided it was a good idea to get to the airport at 5 a.m. and who decided it was a good idea to do, 3 back-to-back interviews and then book a session at night?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, also as I get older, my, while I have plenty of energy, I also I'm quicker to acknowledge that, I'll have less energy for some things, and it's like, and then I'm doing something a disservice if I wear myself out by the time I get to a particular task, or, I don't want to be exhausted during an interview, because then I'm really doing a disservice to the guest on my podcast. I don't want to be overly exhausted or sick, and definitely don't want to be hungover for a recording session, Those are things I've experienced, but not in a long, long time,
I was going to say, that doesn't seem like that's an issue for us lately.
It's not. I mean, it's really less of an issue for me. I kind of quit drinking and even quit coffee and stuff recently, which is
sacrilege.
Sacrilege, I know, especially on this show. But I mean, I did find that like those things that felt like they gave me a little bit of a boost were really putting the brakes on, what I was trying to do. And so I'm just trying to explore, the balance of busyness and productivity and health and all that, so that I actually get maximum effectiveness on whatever I'm working on.
Do you take the lessons of your own schedule, and does that bleed over into production schedules for you in the studio? And I'll give you an example. Like, I did a vocal overdub session last night with somebody, and he came at me and he was like, hey man, so I really want to get this done and this done. And I just said, you know what? Why don't we just do one song and do it really, really well? And it turned out to be the right call. And we got a beautiful vocal take done, comped, ready to go, all done. Instead of trying to like, okay, we got that done. Now let's squeeze another one in there.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm always game for trying to crank out a lot of good stuff, depending on what the situation is. But I also know that the takeaway, is always, if there's one thing that turned out really well, everybody remembers that. And the stuff that turned out badly, it just gets forgotten about. So if you do 5 songs and they didn't turn out so great, especially if it's a singer, that singer's going to go away and think, A, they'll think they didn't sing very well. B, they might, think that they might not immediately identify that you're the reason they didn't sing very well or something like that. But if somebody else comes along and they have a great singing experience, they're going to think, oh, vocals are killer with so-and-so. So to your point, I think it's good to make sure that the results are excellent. I mean, wasn't it Bob Clearmountain or Tom Lord Alge, I think, who said that when you do a rough mix after a session, make it sound like the best sounding mix you can possibly do, because that's what everybody's going to take away with them, and that's what they're going to remember. And then they'll have a perception of how good everything is. I mean, just think about the difference between a crappy rough mix and a great mix on the same material, and how much that can influence whether somebody thinks the song itself and the production itself is great.
And the funny thing is this client I was working with last night, I've been working with him for 20 years, and he always is, hey man, can you do a rough mix?
Right.
I hate doing rough mixes, because then it's like, oh man, now he's going to start passing it around to everybody involved. And it's like, I don't feel like I can stop and put that energy into making the most outstanding rough mix.
Well, that's because when we work up till stopping time, we haven't left ourselves time and fresh energy
Right.
or ears. So I don't know, maybe a good takeaway for us is for us to tell, to almost schedule it into our own routine where we tell our clients, I'll send you a rough mix in the morning, and then come back with fresh ears and like do something really great before starting the next thing. I don't know.
Well, no. I think that is truly effective. And quite honestly, in this particular case, we have to send a mix to a piano player so he can get his part ready. So it's inevitable. I have to make, a rough mix. Now, granted, it's going to be missing parts because we have parts to be added. So the rough mix can sabotage things sometimes. In this particular case, it's going to serve a purpose to help a person get a part, together. So
let me ask you this, Matt, as somebody who's in a band yourself, did you ever, and then you got on the other side of the glass traded in sticks for faders. Did you ever get a chance to move faders on your own band? Or I forgot what your story was.
Yeah. When I was in the band, 7 Day Diary, which was like we'll call it my second band, the Sextants being my first band. The second band scenario, Joe Ciccarelli produced the first EP and Gil Norton produced our record. On the EP, there was Joe did I think he did 4 songs, and then a friend of the band and myself, we recorded and mixed 2 or 3 songs, and they were just ADAT demo, Mackie ADAT demos that wound up on the EP.
So part of my question is, do you remember how that felt to be working on the mix of your own music versus working on stuff for other people's music? And then do you think that it would be fun for you to work on, if your band had recorded today with all the stuff and mixing, how would it feel for you to be dialing in that mix and making your own stuff sound cool?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have the ability to do it, but I find that the analysis paralysis kicks in a bit too much. I'm always trying to push it further than I can possibly push it. Then it's it's got limitations.
Me too.
And I'm just okay, you're going to have to let this go. I've even had mixes of the Sextants that I've done put out there and then pulled them and re-released them with new mixes, because it gets into that territory where you're like George Lucas. You're like, well, I'm going to pull the film and I'm going to make the Death Star explosion even bigger, and I'm going to add CGI this and CGI that, and and I hate that.
The funny thing about that concept too is the reason why we're even talking about it is because if you pull the Star Wars and make the Death Star explosion bigger, at that point it doesn't. I guess for people who've never seen it before, they haven't experienced it. But for people like us, it's that explosion doesn't belong to you anymore. It's my explosion now. I've lived with it since 1978. That explosion belongs to me, man. You can't have the TIE fighters flying around on the screen without me seeing the little white box around it where I can tell how the effect was done.
Oh,
That's part of the magic.
Well, and it's totally annoying because if I watch any of the Star Wars movies with my kids, I caught myself doing it the other day. We were watching The Empire Strikes Back, and I said to my youngest son, I was just like, that was added. Yeah, they added that. And I was like, okay, leave it alone. Let him watch the film and enjoy it.
Right.
So
I can't even imagine what the experience would have been with my dad, telling me the same thing as a kid. I would have been
right.
I didn't even know what that was. Just to close that thought is for me, when I do work on my own music and with my own band, I find there's an excited motivation that just naturally just comes rushing into the music. And so that's why it's really fun for me too. If I do music with, for work, I'm here's the hours that we work, I pour my heart into it and I get wrapped up in it, but I'm very strict on boundaries. And when I do my own music, I'm they're kicking me out of the studio at 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. It's LIJ, it's time to go to bed, dude. I'm
yeah,
wait, I've got more background vocals to sing.
And I don't know if it's like this for you, but so I've got you talk about not booking sessions on the weekend. I have done just that this upcoming weekend. Tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm doing 2 sessions, same band, just bass, drums, guitars, vocal, kind of rock, Americana kind of thing. What's interesting to me is that it doesn't matter who it is, what it is, the night before, the day before, like I'm already in my head obsessing about the setup. I'll get there early. And I don't know if you do that with clients, but like, even for the vocal overdub session that I did, we didn't show up at the studio until 7:15 last night, but I was there at 1 in the afternoon setting everything up so that we could just walk in and go, boom, now we're recording.
Yeah.
Because I just have this anxiety about making sure that it's a smooth experience for them when they walk in and there's minimal setup time for them.
Yeah, I remember really sweating bullets in the beginning of my, session career too. And these days I'm obviously like any of us who've done this for a long time, we're obsessing over it, but we're obsessing with confidence that we'll figure it out, And, the takeaway from that too is just a reminder that like, you're not just working for the few hours of the session. You have to include the hours of the setup. You have to include the night before, however it is, even if that's just a mental inclusion for you. We do wrap ourselves up in this stuff, and, each thing we do, which affects, things before it, things after it. And I think as we do this more often, we become more familiar with that, and we begin to really recognize it. We realize like when I came back from the big trip to Costa Rica, I didn't even immediately jump back into work. I was like, I know I'm going to need a buffer when I get back. So even that decision involved like, don't really schedule anything for a couple of weeks. Just take care of like whatever, is immediately needed. So that, to your earlier question about schedules and calendars, is like when you put things in the calendars, like learn to put your buffer times in there too, and make sure you've given yourself the breathing room, or else you will just crash and burn.
Great advice, and so important, the buffer time. Super cool, dude. Great to chat with you as usual, and I appreciate you coming on the show and making an appearance.
My pleasure, man.
You've been on a few times now, as I've been on yours a few times.
It's always fun to chat with you, dude. And I mean, your show's great, and I've met so many cool people through you too. The guests that you have on your show, the audience who listens to your show. It's been cool, man.
Well, thanks for being a part of it. Those who don't know LIJ, obviously I'm going to include links in the show notes, and you can check out Recording Studio Rockstars. You can check out LIJ has a studio called the Toy Box Studio, and I'm going to put all that stuff in there. So those who aren't familiar,
I'll send you a link to my music too. And
please do.
So we'll have the Skadoosh record that you and I did together. That were the first Atmos mixes, and we could put in, Chris Chamniss's music, so if people can hear the production and your fabulous mixing work.
Yeah. Now we only did We only did 2 songs off Skadoosh and Atmos.
Right. Fair. Yeah. And then the stuff that I wrote down in Costa Rica, I've been working with a small label, Go Hill Records out of Los Angeles, and he liked it so much. He's like, dude, you got to put this out. I was like, really? Just the demos as is?
Putting it out like kind of raw.
Right. Going to put it out raw. And then I still want to, re-record it, but I think it's good. I think it's good to move. In some cases, it's good to move forward quickly, because otherwise, we're familiar with those ideas of like having a hard drive full of old archive stuff that just sits on a shelf for our whole life instead of ever getting let go of, Great to connect with you, and thanks for having me, dude.
You got it. Great to see you. Take care, and I'll probably just talk to you later today.
Probably. And anybody else who's watching or listening, you feel free to just email me, or if you got my number, call me too.
You're right. Good. Yeah. All right, dude. Take care.
Cheers.